Okay, good evening. Thank you for joining us for our first ever virtual State of the City Mayor's Address. Let's start off by honoring our flag with the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Chairman David Rubel, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of
America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dave. Mayor Pro Tem Dictero, could you please give us the inspiration?
I'm honored to, Paula. Lord, we are grateful. These last 8 months have been among the most stressful in any of our lifetimes, but with your help and guidance, we are on the road to recovery. Lord, we live in troubling times. In our public discourse, civility and respect for each other is lacking. Personal attacks have become the new normal, and kindness can't be found. Please, Lord, help guide us to a different path, where kindness returns, respect is expected and given, cooperation is again the normal way, and love for each other is what we all give and receive. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Steve. Welcome to the Laguna Beach Chamber of Commerce State of the City Mayor's Address. My name is Paula Hornbuckle Arnold. I am honored and especially humbled to serve as your president and chief executive officer. I'd like to start by thanking our State of the City Platinum sponsors, Cox Communications and Bomel Construction. I need a special shout out to Denise Ford of CVU Advisors, who was inadvertently left out of the Leadership Luncheon program. A special thank you to our annual chamber sponsors, Visit Laguna Beach, Julie Loughton Design Build, the Laguna Beach Company, Cox Communications, Waste Management, Emerald Bay Community Association, Ganal Lumber, the Surf and Sand Resort, the Toll Roads, Southern California Gas, the UPS Store, Firebrand Media, and KXFM 104.7. I feel it's necessary to also recognize members of the community who were sponsors of our various canceled events. These folks have so generously allowed us to keep their sponsorship dollars and use them for operating expenses. So thank you. Davison Toft Attorneys, Julie Loughton Design Build, Noakes and Quinn, Alessa Chef Alessandro Perosi, Marshall Innens, Mark Summerfield, and Marianne Tracy. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge our distinguished guests in attendance. Mayor Bob Whalen, Mayor Pro Tem Steve Dictero, City Council members Sue Kempf, Peter Blake, and Tony Eisman. Also in virtual attendance are Assemblywoman Cotty Petrie Norris, Orange County Supervisor Lisa Bartlett, Laura Oatman from Congressman Harley Ruda's office, and a representative from Senator John Moorlach's office. Thank you all for joining us today. JJ Ballesteros has served as my board chairman for the past 2 years. He is the father of 2 beautiful boys, Cruz and Christian, and husband to the amazing Andrea. As board chair, he's level-headed and thought-based. Before he speaks, he listens, a great quality in a work husband. He's smart and engaged in our community. To give the State of the Chamber address, it is my pleasure to welcome the 2020 Chairman of the Board for the Laguna Beach Chamber of Commerce, Mr. JJ Ballesteros.
Thank you, Paula, and everyone who took the time to join us this evening. Whether this event was held at the Montage with lunch and networking or on a Zoom call, in speaking with our mayor and city manager months ago, we felt that the state of the city was too important to cancel, and we're happy to be here with you this evening. Being that this year's State of the City is a little different, well, let's face it, 2020 has been nothing but different. I would like to take a few minutes and summarize 2019 and share what the Chamber has done and continues to do in 2020. By all accounts, 2019 was a banner year for the Chamber. I'm not just saying that because I was the new chairman of the board and we got a new president, Paula Arnold. We became more focused on outreach, our members, city initiatives, and working with our city council. First side, okay. We added 70 new members, which gave us a total of 252 members. Between our Facebook and Instagram accounts, we have over 9,000 followers. We had over 17,000 website visitors and increased our email subscribers to over 4,000 people. We held 8 ribbon cutting ceremonies, 3 seminars on sexual harassment training, social media marketing, and how to use your local media. Our 4 signature events were also extremely successful. We had 222 people at last year's State of the City at the Montage, 35% increase over previous years. We sold out our leadership luncheon with 111 people, 28% increase over the previous year. And we came 4 players short of selling out our golf tournament, which we brought back strictly as a Laguna Beach Chamber of Commerce event, which was typically a collaboration with the Aliso Viejo Chamber. And our signature event, which for the first time we partnered with our local radio station, KXFM, and put on the Taste of Laguna Food and Music Festival. It was by far the largest turnout for any taste. And the most gratifying part of the event for me was seeing our community come together and enjoy great music and, of course, the wonderful food provided by our local restaurants. In collaboration with the city, just a shot of the taste. Next slide, please. We put on the hospitality night, which is another favorite time for the residents to come together and bring in the holidays as a community. Pause that. Then 2020 hit. We can stop that. Then 2020 hit. And as COVID-19 and quarantine became the new reality, everything changed for all of us. The Chamber, along with our mayor and city manager, decided to postpone the State of the City and cancel the Taste of Laguna Food and Music Festival. In addition, the golf tournament was canceled along with all of our other events. We did manage to pull off 1 virtual ribbon cutting ceremony for Project Scientist. So what did the new Chamber's reality look like? We changed our focus to working with the city, our members, and community, and became a greater resource for all. Paula was answering her cell phone as late at 9 o'clock at night from store owners not knowing where to go for COVID relief information. Our website was being updated constantly on all the different resources available from our federal, state, and local levels. You can ask her, she was busy. The Chamber needs to fundraise or it can't operate. And even though we had little to no money coming in this year, we launched our first ever all citywide marketing campaign, Think Laguna First. This campaign was the largest investment ever made by the Chamber. We felt compelled to do our part and promote that residents shop locally in any way possible. You should have all received 4 postcards and seen our posters and signs at various locations all through town. We also took to social media and really let the word out. We received nothing but positive feedback, and many of our establishments expressed their gratitude for a well-run campaign. We're really proud of this campaign. Next slide. One other thing we did in April, one more slide forward. One other thing we did in April was let our membership know we were granting every member a 6-month extension on membership dues. With so much uncertainty, we felt it was only right while we continue to promote and advertise for all of our businesses. The Chamber was also there to support the city's efforts in the opening of the promenade on Forest Ave, which has been another fantastic success. Our work is not done, however. We still need to think Laguna first. As we slowly start to reopen again, our businesses depend on us, the residents, to dine and shop here. We have a lot of passionate people in town, and our hope is that passion translates into shopping right here in Laguna. Since the beginning of the year, we have added 41 new members to the Chamber. Despite a global pandemic, 41 businesses found value in what the Chamber was doing and made their investment. I personally want to thank those businesses and our entire membership for believing in the great work the Chamber is doing. At this time, I'd like to thank our board of directors for the remarkable contributions they've made. Dave Rubel from Rubel Fine Jeweler, Julie Lawton from Julie Lawton Design and Build, Carmelite Green from Troy Lee Designs, Hassie Honecker from Laguna Beach Company, Mark Meisberg from the UPS store, Reinhard Neubart from Hotel Joaquin, Jeffrey Redeker from Cal Private Bank, Tyler Russell from KXFM, Scott Sanchez from Firebrand Media, Craig Strong from Hotel Laguna Beach Company, and Doug Vogel from the Laguna Beach Playhouse. And to Paula Arnold, our president and CEO, she has worked tirelessly this year despite these new challenges. I cannot think of a better representation of what the Chamber is about. Thank you, Paula, for all the service you've done and continue to do. In closing, I'd like to share, similar to what I shared last year with other cities having opposing views on things. We have people that would like to see Laguna stay very much like it is, and others would want to see some growth as times change. Both are not necessarily wrong. The Chamber's mission is to support and promote business growth for those that dare to open or continue to run a business here. If you ask any of them, it's not easy. I think it's important to remember that a large number of our business owners are in fact residents. They have invested a great deal of time and money to provide something of value to us, and we should give them the support they need to be successful. It is not an us versus them situation because in a lot of cases, they are the same. I'll end with a quote by one of my favorite authors, Paulo Coelho. This is something I try to live by, and I know our Chamber board has embodied as well. The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. With that, I would like to introduce someone who has been on the City Council for 8 years, Planning Commission for 4 years. He's also served on a number of boards in town. He is an attorney, husband, and father of 3 who all attended Laguna Beach High School. For anyone who has attended or listened to on a City Council meeting, or even had a conversation with him, you get the immediate sense that he is fair and honest. I know, like many others, the pandemic has pushed him to be an even better mayor, and fortunately, he was and still remains up for the task. With that, I'd like to introduce Mayor Bob Whalen.
Thank you, JJ, for that very kind introduction. I appreciate it. So welcome to the first virtual State of the City event. I know that we're all suffering from the constraints put on our lives by the COVID-19 pandemic. But think of the advantages of this virtual event. You can turn it off without embarrassing yourself like you would by walking out of a full ballroom. Or you can laugh or curse at the speakers and no one else will know. And in the privacy of your home, you can pour yourself a big cocktail and sit back and enjoy the show. So we hope you'll enjoy what we have for you tonight. When you look at this photo of me on the screen, it's a dead giveaway that it's pre-COVID. You can see I look a bit younger than I do now. I wonder why that is. And I actually had a professional haircut instead of the bathroom custom cut that you're looking at tonight. If you had told me a year ago that we'd be doing this State of the City address from the comfort of my home on something called Zoom, I would have said you were from outer space. But as we've all known, you know, the old phrase, anything's possible, and now I know that it is. I want to start tonight by thanking all of you for attending this evening. I especially want to thank some of our distinguished guests, and I have to begin by welcoming my fellow council members. Mayor Pro Tem Dick Dureau, thank you for the inspirational remarks at the outset. Also, my fellow council members, Tony Eisman, Peter Blake, and Sue Kemp are all with us this evening. Next, please join me in welcoming our very own Laguna Beach neighbor, Assemblywoman Kati Petrie Norris, our fabulous 5th District Supervisor, Lisa Bartlett, Laura Oatman, District Director for another Laguna local, our outstanding Congressman Harley Ruda, and I know we have a representative from State Senator John Morlock's office, an old friend of mine from many years ago during his days at the county. So let's have a virtual standing ovation for these 4 great supporters of our city who work hard to represent us at the state, county, and federal level, and always looking out for the interests of Laguna Beach. Thank you all for being here this evening. We really appreciate your time. 2020 is the year of the unexpected and the unprecedented. No one planned for COVID-19 to hit or to have the devastating impact that it has had on our public health and our economy. As a nation, we were unprepared to handle the pandemic of this proportion. But if you think back, we were unprepared at Pearl Harbor, we were unprepared for 9/11. And while the lack of preparedness can't be overlooked, It's the response to a crisis that's most critical. We saw that in World War II. We saw that in 9/11. American dedication, determination, and discipline saved us from those crises and helped us to become a stronger and more resilient country. And it is those qualities that will lead our recovery this time from this global pandemic. This pandemic underscores, I think, that the quality of leadership matters, that government can make a difference. Much has been written and talked about regarding the president's response to the pandemic, and I will leave it to others to make those judgments. Tonight, we will focus on our local response and how our representatives, the Bartlett at county level, Assemblywoman Cotty Petrie Norris, State Senator Morlock at the state level, and Harley Ruda at the federal level, have made a difference to the city, our schools, and our local businesses, and helped us along to the road of recovery. But before we get to the details of tonight's presentation, I have to take a minute to thank our city employees for their remarkable commitment and dedication to the residents of Laguna Beach throughout this difficult year. Our response to the pandemic has been quarterbacked by our city manager, John Petig, with assistance from our Assistant City Manager, Sheree Dupuy, Captain Rachel Johnson of our police department, our city attorney, Phil Kahn. As many of those calls worked collaboratively. Members spoke daily to gauge our public health, public safety, and fiscal response to the pandemic. There was no playbook for this pandemic, and the guidance was fluid and changing. We certainly didn't get everything exactly, but from that I have received from the community, I believe that this group hit most of the right notes.
Bob, you're breaking up a little bit.
Balancing.
Bob, your internet connection seems to be impacted. Let's pause just for a moment, see if it can catch up. I think we were able to hear most of your remarks. Why don't you go ahead and give it a try again, and if not, we may have to have you zoom back in.
Okay. So I was just saying, we certainly didn't get it exactly right, but from the overall response that I've received from the community, I believe that this group hit most of the right notes in balancing public health concerns with the need to reopen businesses and public services safely. While many of the day-to-day decisions were made by this core group, larger decisions like closing and opening our beaches and trailheads and canceling 4th of July events, our trolley service and summer programs were made by the City Council. I want to thank each of my fellow council members for the time, thought, and effort that they put into these decisions and to commend them for what I believe were wise choices in difficult circumstances. Closing and then opening our beaches was among the biggest challenges. I have to thank Supervisor Bartlett for pushing the county to close and open beaches in South Laguna in coordination with what we were doing at the city. And I have to thank Assemblywoman Petrie Norris for helping us to coordinate with the governor's office to be the first city in Orange County to have a plan approved to reopen our beaches after 41 days of closure. Beyond the core group that I mentioned, I know that all of my fellow city council members join me in commending our first responders in our marine safety, police and fire departments, our public works department, and our water district employees, who from day one of the pandemic put themselves out on the front lines, risking their own health to provide critical public services to the residents of the city. Think back to March when no one really knew how risky it was to be out and mingling with others. While most of us stayed at home during these early days, these brave employees were out doing the essential work to keep the city functioning and our streets and beaches safe. As we moved from a pure public health response to business recovery, another group came into play. I have to thank Councilmember Sue Kemp, Assistant City Manager Sheree Dupuy, and Chamber Executive Director Paula Hornbuckle Arnold for spearheading the thought process behind our economic recovery program. I have to thank Community Development Director Mark Weiner for taking the lead to have his department implement many of the temporary uses that are part of the economic recovery program. You will hear more about that recovery plan tonight. And I have to thank our cultural arts manager, Sean Poschel, and the Arts Commission for implementing creative and safe public art events and performances to lift our spirits during an otherwise grim and anxious time. But I would be remiss if I concluded without commending the owners and operators of our restaurants, our retail stores, our art galleries, and other businesses for your part in hanging in there to help your employees survive as best you could through these closures and to reopen safely and in compliance with the reopening guidelines. Thank you very much for doing your part. We're not out of the woods yet with respect to this pandemic, either from a public health perspective or in terms of economic recovery. We must remain vigilant on the public health front, wearing masks, social distancing, and adhering to reopening guidelines to avoid another step backwards and another surge. We must continue to find ways to assist economic recovery so that both individuals, businesses, and our nonprofits can recover from the deep economic scars of the last 6 months. And in my view, we must continue our efforts to reduce the number of cases so that schools can open safely and our students can return to learn in person, surrounded by their friends and teachers. But the good news is that thanks to the efforts and help from all of the people and groups that I've just mentioned, we are in a much better place than we were in the early days of this pandemic. As a county and a state, we have reduced the rate of transmission and the level of hospitalizations. We have developed safe reopening guidelines. We have provided an initial round of stimulus to help our businesses and those who lost jobs. And the finish line is not yet in sight, but we are clearly on the right road. Let's all work together to get this job done and done right. And now let's move into the rest of our program. We'll give you a review of the past year and the year to come. And please enjoy this video reviewing some of our recent accomplishments as a city. Thank you. Jeremy, go ahead with the video. Well, that's a great review of the year behind us. Obviously, there was a lot going on, and I think the city's proud of the accomplishments it made in partnership with many of you. So we've got to look ahead now, and we've got to look ahead to a period of economic recovery. Next slide, please. So I'm sure many of you have seen this. This is the California Roadmap to Recovery, the 4 tiers, purple, red, orange, and yellow. Good news is Orange County moved to tier 2 a few days ago, which has enabled a number of new businesses to open. You can see there's a minimum of 21 days between tiers. So it'd be, the end of the month before we could possibly get to tier 3, and then tier 4 would follow. So that's some of what I was talking about earlier. The effort I think we all made as a county to bring down the transmission rate, bring down the rate of infection, bring down the rate of hospitalization from the spike we had in June and July following, I think what we all would acknowledge was a less than perfect reopening. We all got a little too anxious and too eager, so we're going to do it right this time. Next slide, please. With the red tier, as you can know, our restaurants, great news for them, 25% indoor seating. They're able to be open. Limited capacity, our museum's back open, which is great news for the museum. And we're very pleased that locally here, our Sawdust and Laguna Craft Guild are going to reopen this month with safety protocols. The Sawdust, I believe, is opening this weekend. So hopefully a number of you will get out there and support our local artists. I've toured the grounds. They've done a fantastic job in terms of preparing it for visitors in a safe way. Masks will be required to get in, and I wish them the best along with the Craft Guild. Next slide, please. So this is, again, another example of our partnership, with the city, between the city, Visit Laguna, Chamber of Commerce, working to, have businesses reopen safely. As I said in my earlier remarks, I think our local businesses have done a fantastic job of complying with the reopening guidelines and protocols. You can see a link to a website there where you can make the Clean, Safe, Ready pledge. We encourage people to go there and look at that and the details there. But again, thanks to the Chamber and Visit Laguna for partnering with us on this program. Next slide. So this is the Mask Up. One of the interesting things that sort of emerged from this pandemic, there are 34 cities in Orange County, 34 mayors. This is my 3rd year as mayor. I don't think it was rare that I would talk to other mayors. Occasionally you talk to them on a particular issue, but we've now got weekly calls or twice a week calls with all 34 mayors participating and, batting ideas around. And one of them that came out was this Mask Up to Open Up campaign. You can see on the left there, we're going to be replacing all of our city signs with that theme. And down below that picture, the various mayors met at different locations, kind of iconic locations around the county. And our local one here was the Festival of the Arts, and we had Dana Point, Newport Beach, and Laguna Woods come in. So that'll be a fun PSA that'll come out. It's the Orange County High School for the Arts that is putting it together for us, which is kind of fun as well. So take a look for that on various social media, probably towards the end of the month. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, I think the state and federal funding has been very important, for our efforts, not only city efforts, but Supervisor Bartlett worked with us. I think there was just over $500,000 of CARES Act money allocated to Laguna Beach businesses and nonprofits. She did a great job putting that program together, processing it through quickly, $10,000 grants to a number of our businesses and nonprofits. Assemblywoman Petrie Norris, as I said earlier, has been extraordinarily important, assisting us in our communications with the state and with the governor's office. She also obviously was key in putting together the state budget, along with Senator Morlock, that protected our school funding throughout the state, which again I think was critical. And I know they continue to work and look for ways to help our local governments survive in this really, frankly, very difficult time. And of course, all the credit to Harley Ruda, our congressman. He was there. He voted on the CARES Act funding that came through to the state and then eventually down to the county and eventually down to the city. So I know he's pushing hard. We've been in constant communication with his office. I know he's pushing hard for further assistance for another round of funding, and we're all looking forward to that being successful. You'll hear a little bit later about some of our financial issues from our city manager, and not just Laguna, but I think all, the state and local governments are going to need additional assistance from the federal government to really get through this crisis. Next slide, please. So making the promenade permanent, we're looking ahead. We voted a couple weeks ago to extend it through January 2021. And we directed staff to assess the permanent, the road to making it a permanent improvement. What would we have to do if we were going to do that? We'll be getting a report back in January on that. So stay tuned. I know many of you in the chamber with businesses in town have been very supportive of that. A number of residents have been supportive of it. I think it's been a great addition to our community, and we'll see if we can figure out a way to make it permanent as we look at that option in January. Next slide, please. We also have a parklets program. This is Harley Restaurant, no relationship to our congressman, but the first one that's up, the city has allocated $5,000 to any restaurant. We'll grant you $5,000 to assist in the construction of a parklet. I know we've got a number of them that are in process as well. Our assistant city manager, Sheree Dupuy, worked with Laguna Construction to come up with a standardized design, which I think looks great, and came in just under the $5,000 amount. So thank you to Laguna Construction for partnering with us on that. I think it's going to look great, and hopefully we'll see more of them popping up around town, not just in the downtown, but down in the HIP district, and hopefully throughout town. Next slide, please. So we've all been reading about wildfires, constantly the last several weeks. The air throughout the state has been, impacted on an unprecedented level. I'm proud to say that we as a city have been working for really several years on our wildfire mitigation and preparedness program. Last July, the council approved a wildfire mitigation report and fire safety report, 47 recommendations. You can see some of the ones we're engaged in here. Installing an outdoor warning system with 24 locations. We've got about half of them installed already. We're working on an evacuation model. I think we've all read and seen about that. Myself and the city manager and a number of others took a trip to Paradise after that devastating fire up there, and we saw, what can happen to a community if you're not, if you're in the path of a out of control wildfire, and it's sobering to say the least. So we've been working on an evacuation model to better get people out in an emergency, expanding our fuel modification zones. I have to again thank Assemblywoman Petrie Norris, $1 million grant from the state last year to help us expand fuel modification. And we've dedicated that to some expansion in South Laguna around the hospital. We're updating our emergency evacuation plans, and we're working on special considerations in light of COVID-19. Next slide, please. Another part of the wildfire mitigation fire safety plan is doing some utility undergrounding to make sure that we do have safe evacuation routes. You'll see there on September 22nd next week, we're scheduled to approve the formation of 2 of those. One, Bluebird Canyon, which is a box canyon. As we know, there's only one way out. I think it'll be hugely beneficial to that neighborhood to get those underground, those utilities. And then there are remaining utilities on PCH, which is one of our, we only have 3 ways in and out, as we all know, and that's PCH is 2 of them, 1 north, 1 south. So we're looking to approve an undergrounding district there. We've acquired $10 million worth of what are called Rule 20A credits from the Southern California Edison that basically allows us to cut the cost of undergrounding in half. So it's been a good move for the city. Next slide, please. Well, record low crime rate, and Chief Farinella, I think she's still on the call, will be retiring and leaving us, and we're all extraordinarily sad about that. I think everybody on the call knows that her 5 years here in the city have been hugely beneficial to us as a community, and you can see here some of the statistics. We're very proud of our police department and the work that they do. I think it's outstanding. Handling 6 million visitors a year. It's not just a little sleep.
Employees and all the employee associations to address these issues and recommend prudent actions to the city council, who supported them in a very timely manner, and I'm very appreciative of that. So just reminding everyone, going back to April, on April 7th, we had our first round of budget reductions. This was 3 weeks after we closed City Hall. So we reduced the citywide budget by about $12.5 million. We reduced the general fund by about $6.5 million. And as part of those efforts, we had to add $500,000 to public safety to deal with beach closures, trailhead closures, downtown businesses, masks, other issues, because we knew public safety was going to be critical to helping the community get through the pandemic. We challenged our city department heads to work with their employees to immediately tighten their belts and save $2.5 million by the end of the year, which they did, and I'm very appreciative of. We received a little bit of good luck in that our revenues were a little better than expected. Now I need to clarify that. That's better than expected after we cut $12.5 million out of the budget. That's not better than the original revenues that we started the fiscal year with. One of the benefits of saving the money and having revenues come in a little better than expected is that we don't believe we're going to have to tap into the city's 20% general fund reserve after we close the books on this fiscal year. We're going to be giving the city council a more detailed update on September 22nd, but we believe we're heading into this current fiscal year being able to preserve our original general fund reserve, and this should be very helpful to help us get through what is likely to be a multi-year recovery. So this next slide is a slide that was shared with the City Council on June 23rd during our budget workshop. And we wanted to be candid with the council and with the community, and we presented 2 scenarios. One was a bad scenario and the other was worse, and there was simply no other way to say it. Under the bad scenario, we were looking at a citywide loss of $18 million. Under the worst scenario, over $24 million. In our general fund, and this is the fund that provides our public safety services, police, fire, marine safety, public works, recreation, planning, public, and capital, the staff to work on a lot of the public works projects. So in this fund, we were looking at a loss of 9.4 million, about 13%, but it could be worse, going up to almost 13 million or 18% of our general fund. And keep in mind, that's at the same time minimizing the impact of public safety, which is about 53% of the city's general fund budget. So we looked at what the stay-at-home order was going to be. Again, this was June. In the bad scenario, we thought it would be through early summer, which has turned out to be generally the case. However, there still could be a second wave at stay-at-home orders. We hope not. We think people are wearing their masks. They're following protocols. We hope that there will not be a second wave. But again, back in June, these are some of the situations that we're looking at. It's a very difficult environment to predict the revenues and expenditures going forward. So under the bad scenario, we're looking at a recession through most of this fiscal year, through June 30th of 2021. However, it could still be worse, and there could be a severe recession. Our reductions under the bad scenario for TOT and sales tax was 30 to 45%. Under the worst scenario, 60 to 70%. Under the bad scenario, we would have slow growth in use of hotels and restaurants, which we have been seeing recently. Under the worst scenario, there would have been extremely limited capacity in hotels and restaurants throughout the year. Under the bad scenario, we're hoping that use of our general fund reserves and some prudent budgeting will allow us to sustain most services until the economy recovers. If things get worse, we could rapidly deplete our reserves, requiring reductions in core services such as public safety. I'm pleased to say at this point that we're trending more toward the bad scenario, but we are still very concerned about the upcoming winter, about the flu season, about when there will be a vaccine, about how quickly the economy will recover, about the level of confidence that Americans will have to returning to public life. So we need to continue, as the mayor said, continue to wear our masks, continue to follow our protocols, continue to be as safe as we possibly can to help ourselves, help each other, and help our economy, because it is still possible that things could trend toward the worst, requiring additional reductions in city services. Next slide. So then the city council redid, we typically have a budget that spans a 2 fiscal year period. Given the crisis that was facing the community economically, we redid the second year of the budget between April 7th and the middle of June. And this was a Herculean effort by all of the city staff, but I have to call out Gavin Curran, our Director of Administrative Services, who worked many days on end to pull this together with the city team. And I can't thank you enough, Gavin. Great job. So on June 23rd, we had a budget workshop with recommendations that were ultimately adopted by the city council on June 30th. As part of the budget that the council adopted, we reduced expenditures by $18 million citywide and $9.4 million in the general fund. One of the issues we face looking forward is that the revenues that the city receives and the data tends to lag behind the actual performance. So for example, the summer quarter from hotel tax revenues, we will not know until November. So we anecdotally speak to hotel operators to visit Laguna. We see that occupancies are better, but as we head into the fall, there are not likely going to be the huge holiday parties that a lot of companies typically hold, conventions, conferences. Those things are still going to be likely on hold for most companies. And that is going to impact our hotel industry during the winter months. Similarly, sales taxes, we will not have actual data until this January. And although some of our restaurants have been working well with the promenade, with the parklets, with outdoor seating, it is certainly not like a normal year for them, and that is going to impact the city. So we're going to have to continue to monitor our revenues and our expenditures and make prompt adjustments if we need to. As I said earlier, we are trending at the moment toward the better of the two scenarios, toward the bad scenario. That's good, but we are still a long ways from coming out of this. And even when we do come out of it, I expect there's going to be a slow recovery to the economy, that we're going to need to continue to manage our budget. We have some reserves that can help us maintain services, but we're going to have to continue to work through this and work together. So we are hopeful that with the slightly better results we are seeing from closing last year's books, we may be able to take that money and set it aside instead of using our reserve. So we'll be recommending that to the City Council on September 22nd. That may give us as a community some additional breathing room as we move forward to work through what is likely going to be some type of a recession. So maintaining our reserves for the longer term is really essential to our ability to service the community. Again, I want to thank all of our employees and our employee associations. Many of our employees voluntarily gave up raises that they were scheduled to get, or they postponed raises that we were in the process of negotiating when COVID hit. So I want to thank all of the employees for sacrificing to help the community work through this crisis. Next, there is a little bit of good news, and I'd like to announce a new team member. So we will be bringing Mark McAvoy on board as our new Director of Public Works on September 28th. He is currently the Director of Public Works and Development Services for the City of Monterey Park, California. He has over 20 years of experience in public works management and operations. Prior to Monterey Park, he worked as a Public Works Director in Lomita, and he's also worked in several other cities in Southern California. Mark holds a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Cal State Long Beach. I know you will all join me in welcoming Mark as you see him on our Zoom meetings or you see him around City Hall. He begins his role on September 28th, and we're proud to have him as part of our team. And now it's also with great pleasure that I have the opportunity to introduce someone who's fairly new to our team, and that is Mark Weiner. He's our Director of Community Development. He came on board in December, was hard at work, and then COVID hit in March. Mark has worked tirelessly to find a way to provide community development services to the community during the pandemic, at the same time working hard to try and help us automate and improve our services. Mark has a bit of an update on community development items, so I will turn it over to Mark, and thank you again for the opportunity to provide an update. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, well, thank you, John. And first of all, I want to thank the City Council and the Mayor for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm just going to give a brief update on some of the activities in community development that have occurred over the past year. We've really had a number of accomplishments over the past year, and I'm going to get into those in a moment. But first of all, I just want to say that as a department, we are working tirelessly on improvements, on improving our processes, our procedures, our communications with the public. There's a lot of effort that's gone into this over the past year, and I feel like we're just starting to scratch the surface. We're going to start seeing these improvements come to fruition over the next few years here. So there is a lot of work going into that, and that should not be overlooked. But I do want to talk about some of the more tangible projects that have come through and give a quick update on that. So first, I'm going to start off talking about some recent private development projects. In July, we had the Coast Inn come before the City Council. The Council approved it. It's a historic restoration of a hotel along Coast Highway. This is going to be a good project. It's going to be a real aesthetic improvement to the site. It's also going to have a new restaurant, Bear Flag restaurant on the lower level. So we're looking forward to seeing this get constructed in the near future. Next slide. We've also been working with the owner of Hotel Laguna on doing a restoration project. This is really a landmark building for our city and our downtown. It's very important to us that it be reopened and that it be restored. Right now we're in phase 1, which includes a restoration of the lower level interior. Their goal is to get the restaurant open in the near future. We've been working diligently with them on this. There's also a phase 2 component of the project that includes exterior renovations and a historic renovation of the building as well. So we've been working very closely with the owner over the past few months, and we're looking forward to the date in the near future when the hotel can be reopened and enjoyed by the public. Next slide, please. Also a real exciting project is the Laguna Movie Theater. This is also a historic restoration project. It's being proposed by Rivera, which is an electric car company, and they're proposing, it's really an adaptive reuse of the site. They're going to retain a portion of the theater, and that can be used for community events and public speaking appearances. There's also going to be public office and meeting space at the site. And then they're also going to have electric vehicle education and marketing for their cars. But overall, it's a really good project. It went to the Planning Commission for concept review a couple months ago, and we're looking to get it entitled early next year. Next slide, please. So that covers the private development projects, some of the big ones that we have in the works. But there's also been several long-range, more advanced planning accomplishments over the past year, and I just want to go into those real briefly. First of all, because we're in a coastal city, anytime we modify our programs or our codes, it has to get certified by the Coastal Commission. So that's why there's a note on here that some of these are pending Coastal Commission approval. So we did recently adjust our parking rates. That was done by a coastal development permit. And the parking rates and the revenue from that is really important to the city for providing our essential services. That was denied by the Coastal Commission, unfortunately. However, we've noted some of the concerns they had with our previous permits, and we're planning on addressing those and coming back by the end of the year. Once again, looking to increase parking rates. So we are working on that, and we are working closely with the Coastal Commission and the Executive Director to find a solution that can get approved. Short-term lodging, as you may know, this has been a program in the works for a while. The city is looking to prohibit short-term lodging in the residential districts, but allow it in the commercial districts and downtown. We had our local coastal program amendment go to the Coastal Commission in August. And strangely enough, the Coastal Commission actually wanted the city to be more protective of long-term housing stock. So they continued the item to October. And that's a real departure from the Coastal Commission's previous position on this issue. In the past, they've been very pro short-term lodging. However, I think because the state has started to recognize that there's a housing crisis, they're kind of changing their position on this. And now they want to see us be more supportive of long-term housing, more protective. So we've been working closely with coastal staff, and we've agreed upon a program that's going to go back to the Coastal Commission in October, and we're looking forward to getting that certified. Separately, the City Council adopted amendments to the downtown specific plan. That's a very important item. It's important to the city's local economy. And specifically, we modified the parking standards to allow more flexibility and relax those a little bit, and also more flexibility in the land use standards and the business permitting standards. So it went through a pretty thorough review by the City Council. It was a long process. That was adopted. That's been submitted to the Coastal Commission, and we are awaiting certification. We also had the Historic Preservation Ordinance that was adopted by the City Council recently. And what that does is the program, it still has a number of incentives for historic preservation. It's a strong historic preservation program. However, the program is primarily voluntary to be listed on the local register. So I know that's been an issue of community concern over the years. And we finally brought that to a resolution with the City Council, and now it's with the Coastal Commission. Moving on to the next bullet, there's bluff top setback. That's identified here. So what that has to do with is the regulations that are along the shoreline in the bluff top area. We've been working closely with Coastal on that. And there's some ambiguity as to what you can do and whether you can build new structures in that part of the city or remodel your home even. And we went out and we got a geotechnical report done of the shoreline, and that supported many of the regulations that we're proposing to provide kind of a fair and standard way of allowing development in the bluff area. We have submitted that to the Coastal Commission. We are awaiting their reply, but so far the feedback has been positive. However, that has not gone through the local process yet of going through Planning Commission and getting adopted by City Council. And then finally, there's the housing element that's listed on here. We did recently hire a consultant to work on this long-range planning document. And what the housing element does is it addresses the housing needs in the city, and looks to where we can accommodate new housing opportunities. So we're early in the process there. However, we are looking to complete that by this spring. And there's going to be several public workshops and Planning Commission review and City Council involvement. So that's an exciting project as well. So I just wanted to give an update on some of these advanced planning projects that are in the process or that have been approved. Like I said, there's been a number of accomplishments over the past year. However, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and a lot more needs to be done. So this is really just the start, but I'm excited about what we've accomplished and where we're going to go next. And that is my update on community development.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for that great report. And I'm Sheree Dupuy, Assistant City Manager, and I'm going to be highlighting some of the public works project that is going to be coming up in 2021. But before I do that, I really want to thank the mayor for his kind remarks, the City Council for supporting me, working for the community over the last year through this pandemic. And I also want to really thank Cassie Walder and Jennifer Chapman and Jeremy Fremont for putting the wonderful video that you watched today, and also the PowerPoint that we are using for our presentation. And also Darcy and Ed from our IT department, who have been great at putting this Zoom virtual State of the City together for us. So with that, the first project that I wanted to highlight for you was the recent project that was approved by the City Council last Tuesday. The City Council allocated $1.1 million for city staff to work on hiring a consultant to initiate the preliminary design and geotechnical and environmental studies that are needed to build a parking structure at the employee parking lot next to City Hall. They approved the concept of a 3-level parking structure that would provide 327 total parking spaces, and that would be over 200 new spaces that would be provided to the downtown. The project, if approved by the City Council to move forward to construction, could begin constructing as early as 2023. The Public Works Department, next slide, please. The Public Works Department is also working on a series of projects as part of the capital improvement program to improve city facilities and pedestrian pathways. One of the projects that they're working on is renovating the South Main Beach restroom. That project is supposed to start construction actually next month, and it would be completed in early 2021. Over the last 3 years, the Public Works Department has actually rebuilt 5 of the beach accesses in the city. The most recent one was the completion of the Agate and Pearl beach access projects. This year, they're going to be starting the work on replacing the Moss and Clio Street beach access points. And over the next 10 years, they have programmed 8 additional beach access points to be completely replaced. The staff is also working with Caltrans on several projects to improve pedestrian pathways in the cities. One of the projects is a sidewalk improvement project that Caltrans will start in North Laguna between Detroit and Ruby's. Next slide, please. In order to protect the city against flooding, the Public Works Department is working on several projects on flood control and channel improvements. One of the projects that's under construction is the improvements of the Laguna Canyon channel near the animal shelter. They're also currently under construction on improving the channel at Beach Street. And the combination of those 2 projects with a project that Caltrans is working on would really protect the downtown businesses against flooding because it improves the capacity of the channel by 20%. We are also going to be working on a couple of storm drain projects in the residential neighborhoods, one along Jasmine and Lacoste Street, and another one is replacing a storm drain on Bolsa Avenue on St. Anne Drive. Several projects are going to be underway to improve our roadways. The first one would be completely replacing the pavers on Ramona Valley. That's the alley that is behind the Glenary parking structure and has significantly deteriorated. They are going to also be starting the work on resurfacing the streets in the top of the ward neighborhoods. They're also working with Caltrans on resurfacing Coast Highway in the most northerly and the most southerly portion of the city. The remainder of Coast Highway would also be resurfaced as part of the sidewalk improvement projects that Caltrans would be constructing over the next 5 years. One project that enhances our flood control capacity, but is going to cause a lot of significant impact to our downtown, is a project that Caltrans is going to be constructing next year. This is to replace a culvert underneath Coast Highway near the gas station, just south of the Broadway intersection. To replace this culvert, Caltrans would have to reduce the travel length from 4 lanes to 2 lanes during the entire length of the project. And that would cause significant congestion throughout our downtown. They're anticipating to break ground in 2021. We have formed a task force from all the departments in the city, including all safety departments, to work with Caltrans staff to see what we can do to mitigate the impacts while this project goes to in construction. It will be significant impacts, but we're going to do everything that we can in our power to make sure the impacts are minimized. With that, I want to turn it back to our mayor to talk about some of our cultural arts programming and to wrap up our presentation. Thank you again for the opportunity for me to speak to you tonight.
Thank you, Sheree. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, John, for the presentations. You can see a final slide here, our cultural arts programming. As I mentioned earlier, our Arts Commission and Cultural Arts Director Sean Poschel have done a great job trying to lift spirits here a little bit during the pandemic with some an ongoing series of temporary art programs. And you know, we had a great contribution by former council member Wayne Peterson, who's now passed away, from the Laguna, his estate through the Laguna Beach Community Foundation, that's funding a number of local artists to undertake some creative art and installations. Big point though on the last one is, you know, we're working with the festivals to prepare for next summer. You know, we've got our Festival of the Arts Pageant of the Masters, we've got Art Affair, and we've got Sawdust. Sawdust is, as I mentioned, opening here this fall on weekends, but it's our sincere hope we can get back to, you know, a full, safe reopening by next summer for all of the art festivals, which is a, you know, a signature of our community here in Laguna Beach, and we value our relationship with them greatly. So I think with that, we are concluded on our presentation. We obviously look forward to working with all of you in 2021 on what you've seen on the screen here, and undoubtedly on new things that'll come up that none of us anticipate. I believe I'm going to turn this back over to Paula, and I think we might have a short Q&A period.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor Whalen, John, Sheree, Mark, great presentation. We just have 3 questions that came in. One is, many of the news articles and social media posts claim that the proposed parking structure will be paid for by us, the residents. Can you clarify how, if passed, it would be funded?
Thank you, Paula. I'm gonna take that question. And the parking structure is proposed to be funded completely from the parking fund. And all the parking fund revenue comes from the parking meters and the pay stations in the parking lots and parking structures. So there is no direct payment from any residents to that fund. The residents mostly use the shopper's permit, and the revenue that we collect from the parking meters and the pay station would pay for the parking structure. Our revenue projections for the new parking structure show that after the first few years, the parking structure will actually pay for itself, and it will continue to even generate additional revenue for the parking fund.
Thank you, Sheree. 2 more questions. These are softballs. What is the status of the trolley system? Anybody?
Yeah, Paula, I get that one. So
Okay.
there's an obvious question as to when the city is going to return to providing trolley services. And it's a difficult question in this environment. So we are going to be discussing this with the city council on January 12th. And the answer will largely depend on the situation at the time. So we're all still wondering exactly when a vaccine is going to be found, what the infection rates are going to be through the winter. What tier is Orange County going to be in? Are we going to be advancing through the tiers to the yellow tier, or we have more flexibility to open up because we're doing better and infections are under control? Also, when we do open, it would have to be at a dramatically reduced capacity to allow physical distancing to occur. So we need to consider when it even makes sense to have probably only 10 people on a trolley that could normally accommodate 30 people at a time. Some of the other things we're looking at is December, January, and February are typically our lowest ridership months. We're also going out with a request for proposals to look for an operator that can provide drivers, because many of our drivers have been furloughed and found other jobs as we've been working through the pandemic. When we bring them back, they have to be tested, they have to be trained, they have to get familiar with our equipment, our routes, and those type of things. We already have acquired many of the personal protective equipment devices we would need to open the trolleys, but it would take 6 to 8 weeks of advanced planning to get the drivers in place, get the trolleys ready to go. So realistically, I think we're probably looking at the earliest the trolleys would return would be probably around March or April, but that will ultimately be a city council decision based on the circumstances at the time. And while we want to bring them back quickly to help the community, we don't want to bring them back too soon in any way that would increase the transmission rate of COVID. And remember, we have multiple trolley services. So we'll have the coastal route that runs typically on weekends throughout the year. We have the summer festival routes, and if the festivals are back next summer, it is my sincere hope that we will be running the trolleys at that time. We have the summer breeze, which picks people up out by the 133 and the 405. And then we potentially have the neighborhood trolley services. So all those will be considerations. At this time, we can't say exactly when we're going to be able to bring the trolleys back, but we will be prepared to do so as soon as it seems safe enough to do that for the community and our visitors, and the city council approves it. So that's the best answer we have at this time, Paula.
Okay. Last, will there be a hospitality night?
Well, that's $1 million question, right? So Paula and I have been meeting and working with our recreation division and staffing on some creative ways to still celebrate the holidays, but not to have large crowds in the downtown. As you all know, hospitality night is usually it's the first Friday in December and brings significant number of people to the downtown. So next Tuesday, we are going to present an item to City Council to propose a change due to the COVID pandemic. What we are proposing is to basically decorate the promenade with the theme of holidays at the promenade, to provide a holiday festive area where people can come at their own time, at their own leisure to enjoy. We're going to have a Christmas tree set up at the promenade. We are going to have the surfboard menorah at the promenade. People can come to the promenade and bring an ornament to decorate the tree. They can write a letter to Santa Claus. We hope to have some virtual visits with the Santa on a couple of weekends. And we hope to do a similar program like we've been doing with the band on the bus, where we have a trolley going through the neighborhood. With Santa, we are hoping that we can do something similar like that to actually take Santa throughout the neighborhoods instead of having people to come and visit Santa at the Santa Village. So that's just a little bit of the flavors of the things, and more to come. That we should have a full report next Tuesday on our proposal. We still want to celebrate the holidays, but we want to do it safely.
And understood completely. So I have some last minute business to discuss. First, I'd like to remind everyone that the Laguna Beach Chamber of Commerce, along with KXFM, will be hosting our candidate forum on Friday, October 9th. If you would like to submit questions, you may do so at questions@lagunabeachchamber.org. And lastly, we have a drawing. Our grand prize will be a 2-night stay at the ranch, including lunch for 2 at the Lost Pier Cafe and golf. So I'm going to make that one first. Mary Ann Tracy. We have 2 additional gifts. The next winner can choose either a $300 gift certificate for Eco Tint located in the Canyon, or a wine sampling for 12 courtesy of PRP Wine International. So that this person will be able to choose Barb McGilvery. And then the next person will be able to have the one that Barb didn't choose, and that is Cody Engel. Those are our 3 drawings. So I miss seeing you all in person. Really, I miss seeing anybody in person. So thank you all for your virtual attendance. I think this was a great way to share what's happening with the Chamber and with the city. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Paula.
Good night.
AJ.
Good night.
Thank you, Paula. Good night.